So after that great Worlds Collide show, we had Money in the Bank. I actually watched them in reverse. So I watched Money in the Bank late last night when I got home, and then Worlds Collide this morning. And like I said, I enjoyed Worlds Collide more. Money in the Bank, it wasn't a bad show. I just didn't think it was great either. Like if I went 8 out of 10, let's say, on Worlds Collide, I would go 6 or maybe 7 for Money in the Bank. And coming into this show, I said the one match I was invested in and really looking forward to the most was the women's Money in the Bank match. It just had a stacked lineup of talent. As it turned out, I enjoyed the men's Money in the Bank match more. Not the finish. The finish sucked. But I thought the men's ladder match was the superior of the two. I was mostly bored by the first half of that women's match, and I really wanted to like it. But something was just off about it. Just a lot of awkwardness early and trying stuff that didn't come across well. A lot of wasted time, kind of just waiting for stuff to happen. It picked up in the second half, though. It was Rhea Ripley, Alexa Bliss, Naomi, Roxanne Perez, Julia, and Stephanie Vicaire in her second match of the day. Rhea Ripley tried to launch Roxanne at one point onto a ladder with a razor's edge, but Perez countered into a Hurricane Rana and it sent Ripley onto the ladder instead. Julia and Roxanne, they ended up burying Rhea underneath a pile of ladders outside, which is where Rhea stayed for a while. The Roxanne and Julia reunion, though, didn't last long. The spot of the match was Stephanie getting Rhea on top of a ladder bridge in the ring for her Devil's Kiss move on the ladder. And we had stereo ladder bridges later with dueling code reds on each of them, one from Alexa, one from Roxanne. Julia returned to the ring and took the ladder bridges apart and then climbed up the main ladder to go for the briefcase, and she got her hands on it, but Perez cut her off. Bliss pulled Perez down. Ripley got back in. She pulled Julia down, hit her riptide, at the same time that Bliss hit her sister Abigail DDT on Roxanne. Ripley and Bliss, they climbed on opposite sides of the same ladder. Naomi then tipped the ladder over and thus dashed their hopes of victory before climbing the ladder herself and pulling down the briefcase to win Money in the Bank. 5th time's a charm for Naomi in these matches, and that was the right call. Naomi needed something. Ever since that heel turn she lost to Jade Cargill at WrestleMania, she's been running around on TV like a jilted lover, complaining that Bianca Belair won't return her phone calls or her text messages. She needed this win. And as they pointed out, the women have a 100% success rate with Money in the Bank cash-ins, which bodes well for Naomi and her chances when that time comes. But each woman had a chance to shine at different points of the match. I just didn't think the match lived up to what I thought it was going to be. Solid if unspectacular is how I would describe it. They did end up adding a 5th match to the show. After the angle they shot at Worlds Collide, it was Dominic Mysterio defending the Intercontinental Championship against AAA's Octagon Jr. One of the rare times where Dom is the larger of the two men in the ring. And it was about as good as you could hope for a sub 5-minute match, which was announced on 3 hours' notice. It was okay. It was okay. I can't imagine this did much to entice people into watching AAA if they didn't see that Worlds Collide show. Dom wins with a 619 and a frog splash off the distraction from Liv Morgan. But Dom's great. I like Dom. Long may he reign. I feel like these two in the ring together, this would have benefited from being a little bit longer. They cut to the back, where Chad Gable implored the Creed brothers to sneak a Fireball-branded ladder under the ring for El Grande Americano to use during the Money in the Bank match later in the night. And Brutus Creed didn't know what they meant by Fireball, so they had to remind him it was cinnamon whiskey. We've gone from dancing Cinnamon Toast Crunch to cinnamon Fireball ladders and Slim Jim branded tables. There isn't anything that this company will not brand. Soon we're going to have sponsored steel chairs and kendo sticks and fire extinguishers. Even the fucking Money in the Bank briefcases aren't safe. They had the Cash App logo on them. They even branded the briefcases. Soon they're going to brand the ring bell. They're going to call it the Blue Chew Bell. Man, CM Punk just got his bell rung with a hard shot, but not as hard as you'll be tonight when the lights go out, courtesy of our friends at Blue Chew. You know it's coming. I don't know how many of you have watched the latest season of Black Mirror, if you watch that show on Netflix, but the first episode of the new season is called Common People. And it's about a woman who suffers, I think it's a brain aneurysm or something. I forgot exactly what it was, but she ends up in a coma. And she has no hope of recovering. But they tell her husband there's this new technology, like this new experimental treatment that could bring her back and extend her life. So they do it. And it's something where it's like a chip or something that's implanted in her brain. And there are different subscription tiers. There's like an app and you can pay for different subscription tiers, which allows you to, do more than like the basic tier would allow. Like if you're on the basic tier, you're probably going to spend like 15 hours a day sleeping, there are drawbacks to this, even though you're able to extend your life. But the more money you pay, the more benefits you get, like that sort of thing. But what they don't know is that the tier that they're on, they randomly beam advertisements into your brain. So you could be in the middle of doing something. You could be working. I think she was a teacher in the episode. And all of a sudden, just like out of nowhere, you start reciting an ad for some product. And it could be a completely inappropriate ad read. But just like in the middle of whatever it is, you just start reciting an ad for a product. I mean, it explores a lot of different themes, corporate greed being one of them. It's actually one of the darkest episodes of the entire series. I won't tell you how it ends. But that's what modern WWE reminds me of. Like, we all run ads. Like, even on this podcast, I have ads. I have sponsors. I'm not faulting them for trying to pay the bills. There's a reason why television shows have commercials, even though they could be annoying. But there's a point at which the entire product just feels like it's one giant commercial. I feel like we are officially in the Black Mirror era of WWE. Becky Lynch and Lyra Valkyria for the Intercontinental title, our second IC title match of the night. I think a great way to describe these two is good friends, better enemies. Because this was their third match, going back to their first one from NXT, and they have yet to have a bad one. This one was better, I thought, than their Backlash match. And after a very aggressive start by Becky, we had a superplex by Lyra into a fisherman suplex for a near fall. There was a bit of an unconventional hold where Lyra had her foot on Becky's neck and wrenched back on her leg. Then Lyra draped Becky over the timekeeper's barricade and jumped from the Spanish announce desk and landed a leg drop across the back of the neck. Lyra rolled her back inside and dove at her, but Becky powerbombed her on the way down for a near fall. Becky hit a manhandle slam from the middle rope for a good near fall. They went out to the floor. Lyra hit her Nightwing finish. Now both women were down, and the referee is counting, and they barely beat the count back in before 10. Valkyria got Lynch in a pinning predicament for a 2 count, but Becky reversed into a pin of her own and held the tights for the 3 count to win the title. The Mercedes Athena finish from the Owen Hart tournament, where the first camera angle, it didn't necessarily look like she had like a fistful of tights. It looked like she was kind of grabbing her ass and using the weight to just, gain some additional leverage. But okay, I'll take their word for it that she had a fistful of tights. But the stipulations that they agreed to before this match, if Becky won, Lyra would have to raise her arm in victory. And so she did, reluctantly. And Valkyria went to go leave, and Becky said, no. You have to do it to all 4 sides of the ring. And so she did. And again, she went to leave. And again, Becky stopped her and insisted that she also had to strap the title around her waist. And Lyra did it, but then she grabbed Becky and gave her a German suplex and then hit her Nightwing finish and then left. The last time Becky Lynch, I had to look this up because I actually didn't believe it. But the last time Becky Lynch won a singles match on TV prior to this was a win over Nia Jax in a last woman standing match on Raw in March of last year. So you had to know that this woman was due for a win. I thought it would happen at Backlash. I thought she would win the title there. Instead, they waited a month and they did it at Money in the Bank instead. I think it's the right move, and it paves the way for the eventual rematch where Lyra wins the belt back, which I have no doubt we're going to get. Now, we also have the return of Bayley to consider, and that could happen as soon as tomorrow night. And I think Becky defending the title against Bayley could be the match for Evolution next month. That's what I've been thinking. But then I also thought about something else, and I'll pitch this to you. What about this? Why not hold off on Bayley's return for Evolution? Why not hold off on her return for another month and wrap up the series with Becky and Lyra and do that match at Evolution, but do it last woman standing? Same match that Becky had with Charlotte at the first Evolution show, which is still the best match those two ever had together. Lyra wins the belt back, maybe with a little assist from a returning Bayley, and that then paves the way for Becky against Bayley at SummerSlam. See, I like that idea better because that way you can wrap up the Becky and Lyra stuff before you move into Becky and Bayley. Because if you go right to Becky and Bayley, it's like, what do you do with Lyra in the meantime? It's almost like she's waiting on the sidelines, or now you're doing a triple threat match. And I know Triple H loves his multi-person matches, especially when it comes to things like Money in the Bank and King of the Ring. I'll talk about that later, but you could do that, but I think this is cleaner. I kind of like doing this better. Wrap up one story before you move into the next. The only thing is, like, if, I could see where Bayley fans would not like that because that means she would have no match at Evolution. It would be a big moment, though, if she returned on the show. But yeah, she wouldn't have a match if you did it that way. Anyway, I had it between this and the men's Money in the Bank as the match of the night, but neither of them were better than Gable against Vikingo at Worlds Collide. We had the men's Money in the Bank ladder match with Seth Rollins, LA Knight, Solo Sikoa, Penta, Andrade, and El Grande Americano. Edge won the first Money in the Bank match 20 years ago, right here in Los Angeles. And to think that Edge originally did not even want to be in the match when it was initially pitched to him. He had to be talked into doing it, because he had already been in a pair of ladder matches at WrestleMania before. And he didn't want to do another one. He just wanted a straight wrestling match. He had already missed WrestleMania 19 or WrestleMania 20 because of an injury. And now they wanted to put him in another ladder match. Obviously, he changed his mind, and I think it worked out pretty well for him. This match got off to a hell of a start with the announcers. Oh my goodness. The announcers arguing over whether El Grande Americano was actually Chad Gable, with Wade Barrett saying they don't have the same nipples, and Michael Cole making fun of him for staring at men's nipples. I assume this is leading to a Manscaped sponsorship, because I just assume everything on this show is leading to some sort of sponsorship. There was a spot where Americano got Rollins trapped in an ankle lock, as taught to him by Chad Gable, on top of a ladder. Andrade then hit a sunset bomb to Americano off the ladder, and my God, he took a hellacious bump. I mean, that landing was just brutal. Penta and Andrade then made it to the top of the ladder, and Andrade, being a good friend, offered Penta the chance to grab the briefcase. And Penta, evidently having never seen a pro wrestling match before in his life, took the bait, and Andrade immediately punched him in the gut. Andrade set up a ladder bridge. He climbed on top of it with Penta. He tried to suplex him, but Penta blocked it and hit a Mexican destroyer on the ladder. Solo Sikoa, who I have to say was actually really funny at different points during this match, he took out Penta and he mocked his Cerro Miedo gesture instead of climbing the ladder, and that gave LA Knight an opening to pull Solo out of the ring and throw him into the barricade. So Knight set up a ladder bridge between the ring and the barricade. Then he climbed back into the ring. Penta, though, met him with a destroyer, and he starts climbing the ladder. Americano suplexes him off the ladder, and then he does the same, not off the ladder, but he delivers suplexes to Rollins, and then LA Knight, and then Andrade. He was like a machine in there. And Americano then goes under the ring to retrieve the Fireball-branded ladder that the Creeds hid under there, and he hit everybody with it. Should have hit him with an actual fireball. Then he would have won the fucking match. Americano and Penta, they fought on top of the Fireball ladder. Penta sent him packing, only to be replaced by Rollins. Americano could be seen stuffing the steel plate in his mask on the outside while Rollins and Penta fought atop the fireball ladder. Rollins fell. Penta was all alone on top. This was his match to win. And he could have easily pulled the fucking thing down, but of course, he had to pretend like he couldn't to give them time to set up the next spot, which was a little contrived, but it still ended up being a pretty cool visual. So it started on the outside. LA Knight catapulting Americano onto a ladder or into a ladder at ringside like a slingshot. Only Knight got nothing on the slingshot. Like, it looked absolutely terrible. Like, you need to have room to properly execute a slingshot, and they just didn't have any. So Knight just sort of fell backwards, and Americano grabbed hold of the ladder. Then he teetered on another ladder in the ring. Anyway, he ended up on the main ladder. I said it was convoluted. And he headbutted Penta off the ladder with the loaded mask. Americano went for the briefcase. Knight pulled him down. So Rollins ended up being left all alone in the ring, and he climbs the fireball ladder. Penta pulls Rollins off. Now Penta and Andrade are fighting at the top of the ladder. Solo Sikoa races up, and Andrade was forced to briefly hang from the briefcase, just for a moment. Penta then climbs a different ladder, and Rollins is calling for backup. Here comes Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed. And they clean house, and Breaker spears LA Knight on the outside. Reed hit a tsunami splash from the top on Andrade. That brought out Jacob Fatu and JC Mateo to fight off Breaker and Reed. And all four beasts brawl at ringside. Mateo got speared through the barricade by Braun Breaker. In the ring, Fatu hits a pop-up Samoan drop on Reed. I mean, this was impressive. That would have been very impressive, too. He hits a pop-up Samoan drop on Bronson Reed, and Reed rolls out to the floor. He gets met by a suicide dive by Fatu. Now, Fatu looks at Solo and points up at the briefcase. And he rolls Solo into the ring, and he's helping him set up this ladder. And Solo begins to climb. And as his hand is touching the briefcase, Fatu, like, his face changes. And he grabs Solo's ankle. And Solo realizes he's trying to move up, and he can't move. And he looks down, and he's looking at Fatu. And Fatu looks up at him and declares, "I hate you." All those months of "I love you, Solo." He should have said, "I hate you, Solo." He says, "I hate you." Forgot the last part, but that's okay. And he pulls him down, and he super kicks him. And then he hit the mighty moonsault on Solo Sikoa. This was revenge for Solo making fun of him behind his back on SmackDown on Friday when he said Fatu was all gas and no brains, which is actually a great line. Fatu then slams Solo through the ladder bridge outside that LA Knight had set up earlier. And with that, Fatu made his exit. So Rollins grabs the fireball ladder, and he sets it up in the middle of the ring, and he almost had it, but LA Knight pulled him down, and he hit a lariat. Knight races up the ladder. Rollins recovers, though, slams Knight's head on the ladder, and then delivers a stomp. And at this point, I'm thinking, this has to be it. Punk or Roman, right? Send one of them out there. This can't end like this. Only it did. Rollins climbs the ladder, and he pulls down the briefcase to win Money in the Bank for the second time in his career, his first in 11 years. This is after running through most of the field on Friday night. I think all but Solo and Americano. He laid waste to everybody. Him and his crew. They beat up Andrade. They beat up Penta. They beat up LA Knight. He was so dominant. You just couldn't help but think, like, he's not winning this match. Like, he was so dominant on Friday. Surely he's going to fall short or get his comeuppance on Saturday. He's not going to win this match. And then he did. And it was very underwhelming. An underwhelming finish to an otherwise very good ladder match, where they also shot the angle officially turning Jacob Fatu babyface. They didn't need much help in doing that because the people already looked at him as a babyface, but now he's officially a babyface, and they have killed off the bloodline. For now. I think we all know the bloodline will never really die, but for now it's dead. You know, now would be a good time if they wanted to trot Hikuleo out there as Solo's revenge on Jacob. I'm just saying, I don't know where Hikuleo is. He's gone into witness protection, but if they wanted to debut him, it feels like now would be the time. So now we're going to get Jacob Fatu against JC Mateo, and then it's finally on to Jacob and Solo. LA Knight. Talk about LA Knight. LA Knight losing for the third year in a row. Feels like the nail in the coffin for him. Unless they move his ass over to Raw. I mean, it really does. Like, this is the beginning of the end. I don't know where he goes from here. As long as he stays on SmackDown, I don't know where he goes from here. He needed this win more than any of the other 5 guys in this match, and he ended up a fucking loser yet again. He said, what did he say on SmackDown Friday night? 3rd time's a charm? He said somebody in the crowd said 3rd time's a charm? Apparently not. Apparently not. When you tell the fans enough times that someone's a loser, they start to believe it. And I'm afraid we've reached that point. As far as Rollins winning and going with the most predictable finish, it now sets up the possibility of Rollins cashing in on Raw tomorrow night, either during or after the match between Jey Uso and Gunther, because tomorrow night we have a World Heavyweight Championship match. And I've been trying to figure out now, ever since they announced this match, like, how do you do this finish? Like, in the absence of a cash-in, because when they first announced that June 9th they were going to do the title match on Raw and they weren't going to do the title match at Money in the Bank, I said there's got to be a reason why they're doing it after Money in the Bank. And it would make sense if the winner of Money in the Bank were to cash in, right? Or try to cash in the following night. But I wasn't sure, you know, it depends on who's going to win and everything. But here we are now. And Seth Rollins is a Raw guy, and he's got the Money in the Bank briefcase. And we know he and Heyman and them have said that he's going to be the World Heavyweight Champion. And I'm looking at this Jey Uso and this Gunther match, and how do they do this finish? Now that Seth has the case, there's no need for him to drag this out. You know, when he won Money in the Bank that first time, he held on to it for months and months. I have to think that, or maybe this is just wishful thinking, but I have to think that the only reason CM Punk or Roman Reigns did not get involved here is because in storyline, they wanted Seth to win the case just so they could screw him out of the title on the actual cash-in. It's the only thing that makes sense. Seth cashes in tomorrow, preferably during the title match, so Gunther doesn't have to lose again to Jey fucking Uso. Roman and or Punk, they get involved. They screw Seth, which leads to Jey pinning Seth to retain the title. And Seth is eventually going to get the title, but for now he can go on with his crew and they could have a match with or feud with Roman and CM Punk. That's how I think it plays out. We won't have to wait very long to find out. We'll find out in 24 hours. But that's what I think is going to happen. Now, they made it official that WrestleMania 42 is returning to Las Vegas next year, April 18th and 19th at Allegiant Stadium yet again. Sorry, New Orleans. You'll get Money in the Bank next summer and you'll like it. They also announced, very randomly, Nikki Bella is returning to Raw tomorrow night. We have not seen Nikki Bella since the Royal Rumble. But now she's going to be back on Raw tomorrow night. And no mention of what she'll be there for, but with Evolution coming up, they must have an idea for her for that show. Wasn't she in the main event of that show? Didn't she wrestle Ronda Rousey in the main event of the first Evolution? I thought she did. In the main event of this show, it was John Cena and Logan Paul against Cody Rhodes and Jey Uso. This was Cody's first match since WrestleMania, and the match that he personally requested when he first came back. Not a championship match, but a tag team match. Okay then. We had a little tease last week that all may not be all right between John Cena and Logan Paul. And here, after working well together for the first half of the match or so, Logan tagged himself in. Cena was not happy, but he exited the ring and then immediately tagged himself back into the match. And Logan was not happy, and Cena wasn't happy, and they started bickering, which gave Jey Uso the chance to finally make the hot tag to Cody Rhodes. He came in, he cleaned house, he hit Crossroads. Logan went up top for a splash. He missed, and he squashed Cena by accident. Then Jey Uso hit a spear on Logan Paul. Everybody was down. Cena tried for an attitude adjustment to Jey, but he ate a super kick instead. Logan hit a pulverizer, but instead of going for a cover, he went up top. And he looked, and he is mugging to the drone camera. There's a drone. So now we're getting the drone view. And he puts his arm out like, come hither. And the drone flies to him. So now the drone is in his hand, and he's on the top rope. And as all this bullshit is going on, that gave Cody a chance to run up the ropes and superplex him, all while holding the drone. I can't say I've ever seen that before. Cena took Cody outside. He cleared off the announce desk. He cleared off a second announce desk. And he put Cody on the first one. And he gets on the table. He picks Cody up for an attitude adjustment. Cody slips out just in time for Jay to run across both tables and spear Cena. But the table did not break. But they did finally break the table, though, when Logan Paul went up top and he landed a moonsault onto Jay on the table, which was an incredible spot. Cena and Cody, they crawl back into the ring. Cena with the championship in hand. He blasts Cody in the head with it before a masked man in a hoodie storms the ring and tackles Cena to the mat. He's raining down punches. Before the big reveal, it's R-Truth. Big reaction for Truth, who levels Cena with the belt before fleeing through the crowd. Cody staggers back to his feet. He hits Crossroads, and he pins John Cena. He pins the WWE champion. First, let me say, as far as the match itself, forget R-Truth for a second. Logan Paul was the star of that match. Even with the botched buckshot lariat, because there was a spot where he went for, I guess he calls it the snapshot lariat, but it's a buckshot lariat. And he tripped and fell after he springboarded into the ring. And Jey Uso actually had a great, it was probably the spot anyway, but he kind of saved it because immediately he wrecked Logan with a super kick. Even with the botched buckshot, okay, even despite that, and everyone's going to make fun of him for that, he was the star of that match. You take out the stuff that Logan Paul did, even like the drone spot where he got caught on top and all that, this was very bland. So he helped elevate it. I'll give the guy credit for that. He ended up becoming an even bigger part of this match than I thought he would be. I didn't care for the match coming in. I can't sit here and tell you I loved it now that I've seen it. It was good, but not great. But the Truth ending was a great reveal. And you can't even call it a return. It's not like the return of R-Truth because he never actually left. Like, if we assume that he has signed a new deal or renewal with them, because remember, like, they told him they weren't renewing him. As far as anybody knows, he still had some time left on his deal before it expired. I don't know if it was going to be the end of June, mid-June. It wasn't up yet. So calling it a return like they did on the show, like the commentators called it a return, like, he's back. It was very awkward. Especially if you're someone who doesn't live on the internet. Like, you assume most fans knew about the situation. It was trending on social media, but not everybody lives on social media. Like, if you didn't follow this whole drama of the past week, you would have no fucking idea what they were talking about. Like, the man just wrestled John Cena 2 weeks ago on Saturday night's main event. And then he wrestled JC Mateo on SmackDown last week in a nothing match. It's like, what do you mean he's back? Did he have jury duty? Like, what do you mean? But what this does is it sets up a potential rematch now with John Cena. And a potential match also with Logan Paul if they wanted to do John Cena against Logan Paul, although I don't see the need to do so. All you're going to end up doing is beating Logan Paul again in another title match. I think he's lost enough title matches. But we'll see how much of a hot shot this really was based on how they follow up on it. It appears Truth may now be going by his real name, Ron Killings. That's what it says right there on the main page of WWE Shop. You know, all the merch it links to is old. There's nothing new there. People are like, oh, yeah, he's got new shirts and everything. I don't think anything there is new. But you go to that main page, at least when I last checked a few hours ago, the first graphic, it's a big smiling picture of R-Truth, and it says Ron Killings. And I'm like, okay, it's a little weird if they're not going to call him by that name. You know, when news of Truth not being renewed broke last Sunday, I was sitting right here. I was in the middle of recording this podcast. So I commented on the news in real time, and it was very surprising, you know, given the fact that he spent 17 years straight working for WWE. And he was such a beloved figure, not only on the show, but to all of his colleagues backstage. Not a bad word said about the man. Just one of those great veteran influences to have in the locker room. But WWE made a business decision, or TKO did. They probably found it very hard to justify re-signing him for the amount of money he was making, given how he was being used. Because when it comes to TKO, it's all about dollars and cents. And then the reaction was swift from all corners of the wrestling world. So we're not just talking fans, because the fans are always going to be upset about something. It was wrestlers, it was fans, it was everybody. Nobody was happy about this. And you look at the television this week, Monday, Tuesday, Friday, there were sporadic chants on all three shows. We want truth. We want truth. What's up? They were chanting for our truth. It wasn't overwhelming like they completely hijacked the shows, but it was very noticeable. And so now the discourse, I'm sure, all week long is going to be around, was this a work or was this a shoot? And people are going to be fighting to the death in the comments about whether or not they got worked or if this was a real situation, and then they changed their minds. The real answer, the correct answer to the question is, who gives a shit? Because the man is back. People got what they wanted. Justice is served. That's the real answer here. But as far as whether it's a work or whether it's a shoot, do I believe it was a work? No, it was not a work. Now, during the Money in the Bank press conference after the show, there was a reporter from USA Today who brought up Truth's return and asked if he was actually released from the company and how much the support from the fans played in his return. And Triple H's answer, talk about corporate answers, he goes, I love the question. Did you enjoy the show? All part of the show, man. And he said it with a big smile on his face. Meanwhile, you have Truth himself on social media directly refuting this and saying, in no uncertain terms, it was not a work. And then you have his son Christopher on Instagram who responded to Triple H. Like, there's a video of Triple H claiming that this was all part of the show. And his son writes, stop the cap, which means stop lying. And then he said, congrats on the new deal, Dad. Last run. See, Triple H can try to control the narrative around this on their own shows and their own channels. But one thing that you cannot control are family members. Like, they're going to speak their mind whether you like it or not. So then Truth went on social media today and he said, I'm going to say this and be done. Wrestling as a collective, fans and wrestlers together, use their voices to help get a black man's job back in less than a week. That's why the how is important to me. 22 million views and broken hearts. Change was made, period. No cap. Hashtag we want truth was seen, heard, felt, and understood. Believe me when I say this, I love every one of you all to death. We made history together. And that's really what it all boils down to here. You don't have to overcomplicate it. You don't have to turn it into a work or shoot. Did it happen? Did it not happen? The reality is WWE made a business decision. And it was a business decision that a lot of people were not very happy with. And I don't think that they counted on the outcry that was going to come out of someone who they saw as, obviously a beloved member of their roster and of the company, but, he was a middle of the card guy. It wasn't like they let go of fucking CM Punk or Seth Rollins or Roman Reigns or someone at that level where it would be like, oh my God, I can't believe they let go of this person. Like, in their mind, I truly don't believe that they expected the reaction to be as fierce as it was. They completely underestimated the situation. And less than a week later, it comes to what we saw last night where Truth is back on television. What kind of deal he may have signed, or if it's an extension, if it's a short-term thing and not even a long-term thing, for how much money, we don't know. There's a lot we still don't know. But one thing I can tell you is that it was a very real situation that played itself out over the course of the past week. And if you are someone who believes that it was all part of the plan and it was all a work, because even if all of these different talents were not in on it, which they would not have been, because, in a situation like this, if they were trying to work people, they would keep it to a very, tight-knit few. But even still, one of the dumbest things that WWE could do in a situation like this is manufacture this and pull the wool over everyone's eyes, including the talent. That is such Bush League WCW dumb bullshit that I just find it hard to believe that they would think that was a good idea and that that's what they would go ahead and do. Because I can tell you that all the reactions you saw from people that work in that company, from Rhea Ripley to Kevin Owens to Natalya to everybody up and down the line, people that currently work for the company, people who used to work for the company, that wasn't manufactured. There were a lot of very heartbroken and very angry people who were also concerned for their own jobs, which they still should be, by the way. Because there are some fundamental aspects of this story that don't change, and I'll get to what that is here in a second. But that aspect of the story, if it was a situation where they were fooling the people who work for them, the talent who work for them, it would just be so incredibly stupid and incredibly counterproductive for them to do that. You can tell this came together fairly last minute because everybody is talking about R-Truth. And absolutely nobody is talking about what should have been the big takeaway from that main event last night, which is that Cody Rhodes just pinned John Cena. That has been lost in all of this. We don't know what kind of deal Truth signed. Again, it could be a short-term thing just to give him the chance to have one last proper run before he finishes up. What did his son post on Instagram? One last run? I mean, I think he at least should be given that. But understand, like, WWE is calling up a lot of new faces. Like, why did this happen in the first place other than dollars and cents? The reality is WWE is calling up a lot of new faces. You cannot keep adding without subtracting. It's the same issue I said Tony Khan was going to face the more he kept adding people to the roster in AEW. It's not just an AEW problem. It's a problem for all companies. You can't keep adding without eventually subtracting. But after 17 years, to do what they did with a phone call and end it so abruptly like that, it felt wrong. You know, they could have done a better job of sending him on his way than surprising him with a call at home and telling him, hey, we're not going to bring you back. Thanks for your service. You can stay home. The man just wrestled John Cena on Saturday night's main event on NBC. How you don't craft a story around that match with R-Truth putting his career on the line and then use that at least as a way to put more heat on John Cena is beyond me. I mean, it would be like Dominic Mysterio showing up to Raw one week with a crew cut. Like, if you want to cut off that sweet mullet, how do you not work that into an angle on TV and do a hair match? It just felt like such a wasted opportunity to at least make his exit mean something. It was like they didn't even think enough of it to come up with an idea to make a bigger deal out of it. I think that's also what bothered a lot of people. Probably bothered Truth too. But for all the people I saw saying, you know, Vince McMahon would have never done something like this. If nothing else, you know, the man was loyal. I saw Baron Corbin on Busted Open Radio sticking up for Vince, saying Vince cared about his talent and he cared about the fans. You know, guys like Undertaker, he was so loyal to him. He would even cry. Vince would cry, real human tears, when he was talking about it. First of all, yes, I'm sure there were a select few that Vince really did feel a sense of loyalty to. Undertaker was one of the few top guys who never jumped ship when things got rough during the Monday Night War. Look at all the people that abandoned him. Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage and in his mind, Bret Hart and all of these different people that, you know, he made stars or bigger stars, and they had the audacity to leave him and go work for the enemy, go sleep with the enemy, right? But Undertaker stayed loyal. And I'm sure he appreciated that, right? But I can guarantee you, if Undertaker ever stopped making Vince any money, he would have been gone just like anybody else. If he felt that Undertaker wasn't doing business for him anymore, he would have eventually been gone too. They're all loyal until they're not. I don't want to hear that Vince cared about this person, he cared about that person. There were plenty of employees, referees, timekeepers, people like that who spent a lot of time, even more than R-Truth, working for that company who got let go after 25 years, 30 years. Even someone like Jim Johnston. I mean, he may not have been a talent He was, well, I mean, he was very much a talent, but just in a different way. He didn't even have a contract with Vince. He had a handshake deal with the man for decades. And then one day, without any explanation, he's pushed out, gone, done, without so much as a reason why. Maybe there was a good reason why, but he certainly wasn't given one. So spare me the loyalty speech. One thing that the R-Truth mess shows us is that if you think you're safe, you are not. There may be half a dozen guys at the very top, if that, who are truly safe, but everybody else is expendable. And you shouldn't think otherwise, no matter how long you've been there for. I'm looking at you, Miz. I'm looking at you, Natty, who just signed a new deal last year. Who's to say that they don't rip it up? They've done it before. The Good Brothers signed 5-year deals. I don't think they lasted 5 more months before they were swept right out the door. Unless you have a no-cut contract, and I'm sure very few do, you're not safe. They sign these long-term deals thinking they have job security, but the power only goes one way when they can release you at any moment for any reason they see fit. That's job insecurity is what that is. And I just hope they all understand that. Now more so than ever. This story looks like it had a happy ending. That's the big takeaway, and the thing that we should really take away from it and care about the most is that the pressure worked in this situation because there were a lot of very angry people who were very vocal about what happened, and so they ended up doing the right thing and bringing the guy back. Not every situation is going to work that way. Now that this happened, I'm sure you're going to see that in the future. You know, as more people get released, people will start hashtags and they'll bring signs. It's not going to work every single time. This was kind of a unique circumstance given how long he worked there for and how well liked he is. But that's really the bottom line of it all. Like, they realized, oh shit, we fucked up. We made a mistake. So we've got to try to fix this. And that's a good thing that they realized it. Sometimes it takes other people, whether it's talent or fans, to let them know, hey, you fucked up. You need to make this right. And that's what they did in this situation. Because Carlito also announced that his contract was not being renewed. Unless you want to tell me that's a work too. And we're going to see him on Raw tomorrow night. He's already been taken off TV. No explanation from the Judgment Day on Monday about what happened to him. He just wasn't there. He was on television more than Truth was. But I got to hand it to him. He parlayed one big reaction in Puerto Rico 2 years ago into a 2-year run where he mostly just did jobs and was played for comedy. Not bad. Then you have Valhalla, former Sarah Logan, who's married to Eric of the War Raiders, posted that she too was not being renewed, and she was very upset about it. She didn't see it coming. Is that a work too? She hadn't wrestled a match since the beginning of last year. You know, she had been managing the War Raiders until stepping away to have their second child, and she was never seen again. So I can't say that's a surprising one. You know, when you're not being used at all, I mean, that's going to be an easy cut when they're looking to get rid of people. So between the two shows yesterday, Worlds Collide gets the win, gets the edge from me, but definitely some newsworthy stuff coming out of the end of that Money in the Bank show.